Hello and welcome to Sunrise Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known in the hobby as Hammerhawks, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known as Crease Collector. So I'm sure you've all seen the title for the podcast already, and yes, it is pretty straightforward. But this is a topic that we've wanted to talk about for quite some time. Although the pain that comes with some of the hobby regrets that we have is definitely tough to swallow at times, it can still be fun to look back and just reflect on some of those mistakes that have been made in the past. So Aaron, do you just want to start out the episode by kind of going over some general and common types of hobby regrets?
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely a painful topic to talk about for a lot of collectors. But again, like you allude to, it can be fun to kind of look back, especially for people like us who've been in the hobby. Yeah, it's quite a while that we've been involved in this hobby, and we've definitely seen the high moments, but we've also seen the lows. And some of these types of regrets, I think, are quite common. And I think that a lot of people will definitely resonate with a lot of them and have some nice stories to go along. So one of the few types of regrets that we've kind of narrowed down here are kind of trading or selling something that you wish you had kept for your own collection. Same thing, trading or selling something you pulled yourself, like maybe in a group break or in a personal box break that you wish you would have kept, but for some other reason didn't. Buying into player hype, we see this a lot with the start of the new products with Upper Deck Series 1 coming out, usually not this year, but usually at the start of a new season. So there's a lot of hype built around certain players. So we see people doing this a lot, almost yearly. We see this going on. Trading or selling low on a player, I think we're going to see a lot more of this right now because of the explosion that the hobby has seen over the past couple of months. We're seeing a lot of people who have either sold for a lot of money, kind of crack that upper level, and we're seeing the Crosbys, the Ovechkins, the McDavid cards kind of go into the next level as far as their key rookie cards go. So we're seeing people who may have gotten rid of a card or two of these guys kind of look up prices now and think, oh man, what did I do? So that's definitely quite common, especially right now, I feel. Not picking up a certain card because of the price and seeing it skyrocket later. So this could be, again, maybe those key rookie cards, or maybe a new product gets released and you see a couple cards that you think are going to drop in price, but they somehow don't. Or again, it might be based around a certain player and those cards skyrocket and you kind of wish that you kind of bought it at release date when it might have been a little bit cheaper. Another one we see is not having a clear direction for your collection. That kind of rhymes, which is awesome. So yeah, we see this a lot. I think we've all been there. When you start off collecting maybe a new avenue of your collection, or maybe you start out in the hobby where you kind of don't know where you want to be, and you kind of collect a whole bunch of nothing, and you're left kind of with a bunch of cards, but they might not be what you want. This is a common one, very, very common. Forgetting to place a bid. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. Along those same lines is just impulse buying. I've definitely done this a lot on eBay, ComC, and pretty much, everywhere else you can buy cards. Impulse buying is a real thing. And for people who do break a lot and do have big collections, or maybe they hit something hot, being greedy or trying to trade or sell something and ending up getting a lot less value later or being stuck with the card. I think we have had that happen to us as well, where you think your cards are worth, gold, and they might not be worth as much as you think. Or, the market falls through on a player and you're kind of left with something that you can move, but maybe not for what you initially thought. So that kind of sums up a lot of them. And then just general bad luck. I think we've all had our bad luck in this hobby, and definitely can cause some regret for later down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good introduction to just some of the general types of regrets. So we're just going to go back through each of those and then just share some of our stories for those types of regrets. So Aaron, do you just want to start off by talking about probably one of the biggest ones is trading or selling something that you wish you had kept?
Absolutely. I know the number one card that comes to mind for me is this happened way back, and I want to say around 2008 or 2009, around there. I had quite a big Dwayne Rollison collection at the time. I was no by no means a super collector, but I really enjoyed Dwayne Rollison when he played. I still am a fan of the Edmonton Oilers. But yeah, like I was a big fan of the guy, still am, and still have quite a few of his cars lying around. But I had probably one of my favorite parallels. It was the 0607, or it might have been 0708, Black Diamond Onyx, the one of one parallels. And I'm not sure if they've been called the Onyx parallel every year, but for those who know the older Black Diamond, not the high end one that is featured now, but just the old style Black Diamond cards, those one of one Onyx parallels were awesome. And I remember winning a massive bidding war for a Dwayne Rollison version. And again, being a big fan of the guy, this was one of my first one of ones in that collection, but also just in my entire hockey card collection at the time. You know, I was quite new to collecting hockey cards at the time, and to get a card like that, a one of one of my favorite goalies at the time was quite amazing. Just by having that initial rush of winning the card from all the other potential buyers on eBay, because his stuff was going for quite a bit at the time. And so just to come out on top and winning that Dwayne Rollison one of one Onyx parallel was quite amazing. And then just getting that card in hand. And I remember just how beautiful these cards looked in person, and it just being one of the staple cards of my Rollison collection, but also just of my entire card collection. I remember that, and it was just an awesome card, and I held on to it for quite a few years after that. And just still, it was one of my favorites. But then a couple years later, a collector was asking about it, and I said it was, you know, a PC card for me, and so I wasn't going to move it. And he eventually, I was collecting a bunch of other goalies at the time. I was going really hard for Martin Brodeur and Ed Belfour stuff as well. And they were kind of my main collections. You know, the Dwayne Rollison collection was kind of off to the side. Had a couple good cards, but definitely not much compared to the Brodeur and Belfour collections at the time. And so this collector offered me in trade, he offered a Between the Pipes stick work card of Brodeur. It was a gorgeous stick beast card. I think it was limited to about 20 copies, and some cash as well. And I definitely got my money's worth for this card because, again, Dwayne Rollison was kind of big at the time. And so his value was, especially for a card like this, quite significant depending on who was buying it. So in terms of a fair deal, I definitely got a fair deal for it, probably more than a fair deal. So I did, after a lot of thinking, I did do the deal. I traded the one of one for an amazing Brodeur stick card, which I loved. I still have that. It's a great card, and some cash, which again, it was fair value. But ever since I got rid of that card, I have regretted it. Probably since the day I put it in the bubble mailer to mail it off. I definitely know that it was going into the right hands. I remember this collector telling me that they were big fans of Dwayne, so it was definitely going to a good home as far as this person's collection was concerned. But as far as on my end, yes, I did get fair value, probably more than fair value, especially now because Dwayne Rollison is of course retired. But it wasn't so much a value thing for me. That card, I think it was my first one of one back in '08 or whatever it was. But yeah, so definitely one. I think I did a search for Dwayne Rollison one of one the other day, actually, just seeing if that card would magically pop up again. I forget who bought the card. They're long gone now in the hobby. Like, I have no idea if they still collect or anything like that. But that is definitely a maybe not a big card, but a card for me that I really enjoyed a lot. And it definitely reminds me of my childhood when I first started getting into this hobby, like for real. And yeah, it's going to be one that I regret for a long time just because those Black Diamond Onyx parallels look amazing. And because, of course, you know, it was just, again, just my first one of one. And yeah, so definitely for those out there listening, if you have a one of one and maybe it was your first one of one, definitely think twice about moving it because, you know, you could be like me and still regret it. Oh man, over 10 years later. So yeah, we'll see if I ever get that card again. But yeah, odds are pretty slim at this point.
Yeah, that's a good story for sure. And you mentioned an interesting point there about thinking long and hard about moving a one of one before you actually do. And that's something I'll touch on later with one of the other types of regrets. But as far as some of mine, kind of a theme that comes to mind when thinking about trading or selling something I wish I had kept is deals that I've made where I remember the card that I gave up, but I don't remember what I got in return for it. And there are a number of instances where that's happened to me, and um, this kind of gives context for a lot of the cards that I'll talk about later. But earlier today, I was going through my old photo bucket and just looking at cards that I don't have anymore, and just saying, "Oh man, like it'd be nice to have that," or I wish I hadn't given that away back in the day. Theoretically given it away, based on the value at the time, but um, that kind of theme of not really even remembering what I got back for something that I wish I still had. Is something that very much reigns true for a lot of these cards. So I'll just mention a few cards specifically. One being an Alex Ovechkin 0506 Artifacts rookie card. That was a card that I think I'd had the redemption for it and got it right from Upper Deck, and it was in my collection. And then I think I traded it maybe, I don't know, a year or so after that. Maybe not even that long after the fact. It might have been sooner than that. But I had and still have the Crosby Artifacts rookie card. So just having those two together was really cool. And I wish that I still had that card. Two other kind of higher end rookie cards that I used to have back in the day that I traded. I think I traded and have no idea what I got for them in the deals were Evgeny Malkin Young Gun and a Carey Price Future Watch autograph. That was probably, I don't know, about 10 years ago or so at this point. Neither card was super valuable at the time, but obviously those have gone up quite a bit in the time since, and it would just be nice to have those cards in my collection. One other specific card would be, for whatever reason, it was just a cool card that I liked. Not necessarily a card that you'd expect to be in my collection, but it was a Sergei Fedorov 2003-04 Trilogy Stars patch card. It pictures him playing for, I think, the Western Conference in the All-Star game, and it had a really nice patch from the Red Wings crest. So it's just a really nice card. And again, I have no idea what I got in return for that card, but it's kind of funny. Of late, there's been a guy on Hobby Insider who is actually completing that full set of those Trilogy Stars patch cards. So just seeing his progress on those, frequently is definitely brought that card back and made me wish that I still had it. But those are a few that come to mind, as well as just a lot of cards from 2003-04 actually that I now at this point wish I still had for my 03-04 master collection. I know at one point I had a Bowman Chrome auto rookie, a in the game use signature series auto rookie, and a private stock rookie out of 99 of Patrice Bergeron. So obviously all three of those cards are pretty valuable at this point. And I'm sure I sold them for or traded them for what was fair value at the time, but obviously it would be very nice to have those three in my collection at this point and not have to worry about even just tracking them down, because all three are fairly scarce. But I'm sure when I do get around to getting them, it'll cost me a pretty penny, and will definitely be more than what I got back for them at that time. So those are just a few of the examples that I have for that kind of general theme of trading or selling something that I wish I'd kept.
Awesome. Definitely. Well, I shouldn't say awesome, but yeah, definitely some big examples of selling something that you wish you would have kept, especially with your 0304 master collection. Quite the progress you've made, but I'm sure you definitely look at that want list going, oh man, like I might have had a couple of these big cards years ago, and now I kind of wish I would have, had a crystal ball and, still had them.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And there were a few cards, some of the rookie jerseys from 03-04 Titanium that were super short printed. And I know I had the Antoine Vermette out of 20. And I think I had Jordan Tutu out of 55, and I think I might have had one or two others. But yeah, seeing those earlier today, I was like, oh, like I really wish I still had those.
Yeah, especially those odd number ones. It's always kind of those, not necessarily the player, like it definitely is. Those players, those big name players are definitely hard to find, but it's always those middle of the road guys, those low end ones where maybe it has a weird numbering, that are really hard to get. So I definitely wish you luck on those. It's gonna be quite the project for sure. Just moving on, the next point we're going to talk about is just trading or selling something that you've pulled yourself and you wish you could have kept. So for me, I don't really have anything yet. Because I'm not really, a box breaker. I break about, I'd say about 1 or 2 boxes a year max. This year, nothing yet, but so I'm not really one to pull any amazing cards. And so I guess that is good because I don't have any regrets based around, pulling cards myself. But I do have a card, like probably my biggest pull. It was a 2015 Artifacts, Tundra Sixes, one of one, of the Dallas Stars. It had Mike Modano, Ed Balfour, Marty Turco, Bill Guerin, Eric Lindros, and Brett Hall. And I don't regret that because I recently just sold it. And it was an amazing card. It was one of the top cards in my collection, value-wise, for quite a while. And I sold it a couple months ago to a Eric Lindros collector, who was also on the card. So I don't regret that sale at all, but maybe it's something I'm going to come back to years later and saying, oh man, like I kind of wish I still had that. But similar to the other deal I did, for the one of one I just spoke about, it's definitely going to a good home. And so I wanted that if I would ever move this card, I want to make sure it's going to someone that's really going to appreciate it. Not so much someone who's going to flip it the next day. It wasn't really much about value for me. It was just about who is this card going to be appreciated by the most. And so I wanted to find a super collector who collected one of these guys and see if I can make a deal work with a collector there. So I definitely did. It took a couple years because I wasn't really sold on selling it, but we'll see if I regret that one. But not yet. But definitely a big card, like probably my biggest pull ever that I ended up selling. So we'll see how that turns out in the future. But Eric, do you have any regrets as far as pulling cards yourself?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that card because, thinking about that specific topic of pulling cards and moving them and potentially regretting them, that's the card that came to mind for you. When I was thinking about, oh, what are cards that Aaron's pulled? That's immediately the card that I thought of. So I'm glad that you talked on that. And I think it's good to, kind of have that recognition of, yeah, like, would it be nice to still have that card? Yeah. But I'm also content with it being, in equally as good of a home where I know it's being appreciated. And, you know, I think that's a healthy outlook to have on moving big cards or cards that you've enjoyed. So yeah, but as far as cards that I've pulled and have moved on from, there are definitely a few, and I'm sure there are more that, probably I would say I wish I still had, but there were four that really came to mind for me. And I would say I don't really break a whole lot anymore. I used to break a lot more as a kid just because I really enjoyed opening packs and boxes. And even though it was more so kind of lower and mid end stuff, I did still get some nice stuff. Um, One kind of just it's a very common card, but I pulled a Steven Stamkos Young Gun, from a box of 0809 Upper Deck Series 1. I assume it was probably in 2008, shortly after release. I went to a card show and got a couple boxes and ended up pulling it and ended up moving it, and have always kind of wished that I hung on to that card. Obviously Stamkos is a great player and now is a Stanley Cup champion, but I always just really liked the look of that card. I think the photo on it was really cool, and the Young Gun design from that year was pretty nice too. And so that was just a card that I really liked, that I do wish I had my copy that I had pulled. Obviously there's nothing keeping me from going out and getting another copy of the card, but it would be nice to have that exact copy that I had pulled. Um, Another one, this I believe was back in 2006, I want to say. I bought a couple boxes of 0506 Upper Deck Ice, which just hearing that, I'm sure you guys are probably like, oh gosh, what did he pull that he, sold or traded for way less than it was worth, now. But it, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Um, I was lucky and pulled a Cool Threads auto patch out of 15 of Marcus Naslund, and it had a pretty nice retro patch. It was a really nice card, and again, that's an instance where I don't remember what I got in return for it. And even though that's not really a card that you'd think, oh yeah, like that's something that I would want, it would just be kind of a cool card to still have, kind of similar to that Fedorov patch I mentioned earlier. Just a cool and very nice card that I was lucky enough to pull, that it would kind of be cool if I still had it, but not the end of the world either. Hopefully it's in a good home at this point. Probably been, I don't know, at least 12 or 13 years since I traded that or sold it or whatever it might have been. And then the two other cards that come to mind are going back to that 1 of 1 point that you made earlier, Aaron. So two of those that come to mind are a Vladislav Nemesnikov Heroes and Prospects complete logos 1 of 1. I think it had a CHL complete logo. I believe that was from 13-14 Heroes and Prospects. And I ended up selling that. And again, I got a pretty fair price for it, but just kind of would be another one of those cool cards that would be nice to have just for, what it was, having pulled, a card like that. And those are pretty iconic and desirable cards, even though that he's not, the biggest name out there. It still would be cool to have that card in my collection and just remember, hey, this is a card I pulled, and it'd be nice to still have it. But again, not a huge deal that I don't have it. And then the last one, again, similar story, would be nice to have, but isn't the end of the world that I don't have it. But at the 2012 NHL entry draft in Pittsburgh, I bought a few boxes of Panini Titanium. I just really liked the product for whatever reason, even though looking back, the value wasn't super great with the product. And box prices have dropped substantially in that amount of time. But I was lucky enough to pull a private signings blue spectrum 1 of 1 autograph of John Carlson. And it's funny because I sold it, I think, pretty shortly after the Capitals won the cup, and obviously got pretty good value for it because he actually didn't have a ton of higher end cards at that point in time. So I definitely got a pretty good amount of money for it, and I didn't mind moving it because I wasn't glued to it. But it was just one of those cards that I very clearly remember pulling, and it was cool to have in the collection. And obviously now that he's kind of gone on to establish himself as one of the best defensemen in the NHL, having a card like that I pulled myself would just be kind of cool to have in my collection. But hopefully, again, like the other cards I've mentioned, it's in a better home, and I don't lose too much sleep over it. But sometimes I think about those cards and just say, yeah, like it'd be cool if I still had that.
Yeah, no doubt. Those private signings were gorgeous. Like they were released, not just in that product either. Like they were released over a couple different products to kind of create that private signing set. I believe over a couple of years too. I think it was like 1 or 2 years they did that. And just, I've seen people go for the private signing set, and it's just gorgeous and definitely filled with a lot of short printed cards. And of course the 1 of 1s were always amazing. So yeah, definitely like one of those cards where it's like, it doesn't really fit in my collection, so to speak, but I think we can all appreciate those cards, whether they fit in our collection or not, and kind of wish like, hey, like, although it doesn't fit, that's just a gorgeous card. And I really wish I would have kept that, no matter who was on the front. So yeah, definitely, I definitely hear what you're saying from that. There's definitely a lot of pretty cards in this hobby, and we can't really have them all, unfortunately. The next one is, like I stated off the top, it's one we kind of see a lot of collectors fall into, unfortunately, at the start of the NHL season. Of course, this year is a lot different, but with Upper Deck Series 1 that is set to release in November, we see this kind of start from this product because, of course, the Young Gun is the most desirable rookie, and the parallels, the exclusives, and the high gloss and all the acetates and things like that that follow, we see a lot of people buying into player hype, and we see, of course, the prices rise. And in a year or two, or sometimes even faster, prices unfortunately plummet, which is okay if you're collecting that player just because you like that player. But if you're not, we unfortunately see a lot of buyer's remorse in the hobby because of that. And people are just buying into that player hype, and unfortunately, in their eyes, losing a lot of money that they might not get back because they've already, invested so much into this player. So I don't personally have any stories myself because I'm not the type of collector that goes all in on, I mean, I do, but not like a player that's all, wrapped up in this hype every single year, and I start a player collection every year. I'm not really that type of collector. So I fortunately do not have any of the buying into the player hype regrets, but I know a lot do. And I'm just wondering, Eric, have you ever seen yourself in that scenario?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I would say I've probably been fairly fortunate in that regard of not getting caught up in it. I guess there's probably one player that I would say could qualify for that. And it wasn't so much really just buying into the hype around the player as it was kind of having some sort of attachment in relation to the player that, kind of motivated me to buy his stuff in addition to just him being hyped up. But um, I mentioned having gone to the 2012 NHL entry draft. I also went to the 2009 NHL entry draft, which was held in Montreal. And as some of you may recall, the Canadians ended up going with the hometown pick and drafted Louis LeBlanc. And obviously having a French Canadian player being drafted in the first round, in your own building, generated a lot of hype around him. And having been there and it just having been a really cool moment, to have all that happening, made me want to pick up a lot of his cards. And so unfortunately, I actually still do have a lot of those cards. Some pretty nice ones too. I know I have the Cup draft board out of 25. I've got, I'm pretty sure I have a Panini Prime, the gold jumbo patch out of 5. Just some other pretty nice cards of his that, definitely are not worth anywhere near what they were at the time. But, it also wasn't like I was just a total super collector of his either. I kind of was picking and choosing what I was picking up of his because even though I, enjoyed picking up his stuff, it wasn't necessarily like the focus of my collection at the time, luckily. So I guess that would probably be my only example of that, really, of kind of, clearly paying way more for something than what it's worth now, especially. But, obviously people know that Louis LeBlanc never fulfilled his potential and, um, maybe not became a bust because he did play, in the NHL a little bit, but, definitely did not become what people thought he would become. So that's kind of my story with that. And then kind of on the flip side, wanted to, of course, talk about trading or selling low on a player. And this is definitely something that I think we've probably all kind of experienced here and there to varying degrees. Some people I'm sure, had massive collections of, any given player that, later in their career went on to stardom and they wish they hadn't gotten rid of those cards earlier. So I'll just share a few of mine and then Aaron, you can follow. But 3 cards specifically come to mind as being cards that I sold or moved on from too early, and those cards have appreciated in value quite a bit in the time since. So the first one, and I don't even remember exactly when this was, but was a Brad Marchand Young Gun Exclusives parallel numbered out of 100. And I'm pretty sure I got it for seriously probably like $5 or $10. Probably back in 2009 or something, 2010, before people really even kind of knew who he was, before he came onto the scene. And I ended up selling it, I think, for, I don't know, probably like $20-25 or something, maybe a year later or so, something like that, and I don't even know what that card is worth now, but I remember after the Bruins won the cup in 2011, a copy of that card sold on eBay, and it wasn't the exact same copy that I had, but I think it sold for like 100 US or something. So even just seeing that, that big amount of value increase over just a year or so of that card was kind of frustrating. It wasn't a card that was firmly locked in my PC or anything that I just happened to move on from. It was kind of just a card that I picked up and didn't really care all that much about, and just moved it because I got a pretty good price at that time for it. But obviously went on to become a much bigger card. And even in that time since, it's definitely gone up a lot since then. I'm sure that's probably worth a few $100s at this point in time. So that's one. Another one that, again, I would really love to have this card back. And again, at the time I sold it for a fair value. I think I probably sold it for about $50 US at the time, was a Marc-Andre Fleury Young Guns. And, obviously that card has exploded of late. It's gone up a lot over the last few years, but even just this year in 2020 has gone up substantially, and obviously that's another card that I wish I had in my 0304 Master Collection. And of course now I have to end up probably giving up 5 times the value that I got for mine, but oh well. And then kind of the big one, and I would say this is probably one of my biggest hobby regrets ever, was, and again, I got fair value for it at the time, but it was kind of one of those cards that I had it for a while, and it didn't really fit overly well in my collection. So it was kind of just like, okay, like I just want to move on from this thing, get something else, and kind of freshen up the collection a little bit. And unfortunately, that was a 2013-14 SP Authentic Future Watch auto of Nate McKinnon. And at the time, like I said, I got fair value for it of, roughly, I don't know, 75 US or so. Well, yeah, now that card is worth 10 times that. So, like I said, definitely one of my bigger regrets. And I really wish I still had that card, but, so be it. Aaron, what are some of your experiences of trading or selling low on a player?
Yeah, definitely nothing that can top that. That McKinnon is, I mean, for one, that Fleury is crazy, but that McKinnon is definitely a big one. I still have no idea what is to come, because I know you're saving one for last, and I don't know what could really top that. But you know what? Hey, like, I'm just glad you got fair value for it at the time, because that's the fun thing about this hobby. We really don't know what is in store tomorrow and what the values are going to be like. Like no one could expect this year, of course, in the hobby with, all the prices being what they are. But of course, on the ice within the sport, we really have no idea what's going to happen. A player could, bust his knee tomorrow, or he could be the next Crosby and just have, a breakout season after breakout season for the rest of his career. You really don't know. And so, and cards, they're so here today, gone tomorrow type of thing, depending on what kind of collector you are. So it definitely wasn't a bad deal, but that one would definitely be hard to look back on for sure. As far as myself, again, I don't do too much, wheeling and dealing for me, but I had a Alex Ovechkin printing plate. It was from the World Cup product a couple of years ago. Not a massive card, but a one of one, a printing plate of Alex Ovechkin is pretty significant. I think I got a steal of a deal on it. I think I got it for like $5 or something. So I mean, hey, like, I'm not one for, snatching up deals here and there, but I saw it on eBay and I'm like, yeah, I can't really say no to that. So after buying that, I thought I would hold on to it, and I eventually sold it. I think I held out a little bit too long at the time. It went up and then it went down for a bit. But when I sold it, I definitely made my money back and then some. But then, of course, with Ovechkin winning, his first Stanley Cup, obviously anything with Ovechkin's name on it, especially a one of one, even though it was a printing plate, and some people don't really like printing plates, but hey, it was a one of one. I just imagine what value I could have got if I just held on to it for, a couple more years. And hey, live and learn. It's definitely a fun story to look back on, because again, it's not something I normally do, but I had to capitalize on this deal, and I guess it kind of burned me in the end, right? Because I could have held on to it and made that much more money. So that one for me is definitely, it's not as much as a McKinnon, but it's definitely one that I look back on and say, oh man, like that was one where I should have held on to it for a little lot longer.
Yeah, absolutely, and understandably so. And then changing gears a little bit, this is kind of more, in terms of picking something up instead of letting it go. But I know that for both of us, there have been instances of not picking up a certain card because of the price, only to see it skyrocket later. I know for me, two cards that immediately come to mind are a Gretzky rookie card and a Crosby Young Guns. And,
Wow.
those two cards that I've definitely always wanted and just kind of never really got around to getting them when they were affordable. I remember the good old days when you could get a Crosby Young Gun for 200, 250, around there. And
Those were the days.
those were the days. And those days are long gone. Similar with Gretzky rookies, getting a PSA 6 OPG rookie for a few $100s. Those days are long gone. Um, Both of those are still definitely cards that I would love to get at some point, and I definitely plan on getting them at some point. But given the prices that they're at now, it's kind of hard to justify doing it at this point. But whether or not they'll come down at all is hard to say. But definitely, those are two that I wish I had picked up sooner.
Yeah, for me, I think, like I'm a big fan of Crosby, although I don't collect Crosby, obviously having anything of his would be awesome. So definitely Crosby for me is one that, of course, with the recent price hikes in everything, with all these, flood of collectors coming into the hobby, and authentically, but also some might say, you know, there might be a little bit of funny business for certain cards, but I think a lot of it is genuine, where you see a lot of these price hikes on a lot of these cards, the key rookies of, Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid, Gretzky. So definitely the time to buy was not right now. It was definitely years ago when, yeah, like, you just said, a Crosby Young Gun could be had for like 200, and same thing with the Gretzky for a couple $100. So the Crosby for me would definitely be one that I would love to have. I'm not sure if I'll ever own one now, but we'll see what the hobby brings for me. Another card that I kind of passed up on was for my own personal collection was a Jonas Enroth printing plate, another printing plate that I had issues with. I saw the auction go for a little bit higher than I would have liked it to, considering what kind of card it was. And this was, I think, last year or 2 years ago. So obviously, Enroth is not a big name in the hobby anymore. So it just was going for a little bit higher than I thought. And then the buyer of the card turned around and tried to sell it again. And then it sold for, I think, a printing plate in 2018 of Enroth sold for like over $100. So that to me was just insane. So definitely something where I look back on the original auction from a couple weeks prior and think, man, I probably should have grabbed it the first time around, and then only a couple weeks later, I saw it skyrocket to over $100, and I'm not paying, over $100 for a printing plate. So that was something in recent memory where, quite surprisingly, I kind of wish I bought it on the first go around. I think first time around it was going for like $30 or something, and I'm like, that's way too high for something like that, only for it to be sold for over 100. So yeah, definitely something I did not expect, but definitely something, another one of one for the collection that I will never own probably, because it's just, I got priced out so quickly. So definitely something that, like I said, I did not expect to happen, but this hobby's kind of crazy sometimes, so it definitely did. And I kind of regret that one. So that one that in recent memory stung a bit. And another popular topic, unfortunately, is passing on a card that you thought you would see later, only to have never seen one since. So for me in my collection, again, primarily being Jonas Enroth cards, not a big card by any means, but one that I would definitely love to to grab one day was a 2010-11 Masked Men Silver. But this one was the final vault version out of 5. So I remember that auction quite clearly. It was going for about, it was a buy it now for about, I think $15. And I'm like, man, that's really expensive for that kind of card. And someone just came and pulled the rug right from out under me and bought it up very quickly after the card was first listed. And I thought, okay, that's fine. They paid $15, and I think the shipping was crazy, like $10, $15 as well. So they paid quite a bit for that card. And I thought, hey, you know what? That's fine. They really wanted the card. No problem. I'll definitely see another one very soon. And I haven't seen one since. So although some collectors are kind of like really turned off of the vault stamp cards, I really like them. I really like the variety that these cards bring to my collection. I know a lot of collectors feel that way as well. So missing a stamped version of a card that I didn't have yet was definitely, it stung a bit, and it's definitely something that I thought for sure I'd see one since, but that was in 2015, and it's almost 2021 now. So that's something where I thought for sure that I would see another copy of, and I've searched everywhere. I have not seen another copy of that card since. So if anyone sees a Masked Men Silver with the silver vault stamp out of 5, definitely look me up because I really need that card. So yeah, definitely something for me, again, in recent memory that I thought I would see sooner, but just haven't seen since.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, kind of looking back, that you think about the price that it went for, and even with the high shipping cost, I think it's probably fair to say that if that card popped up again, for that same price with the same shipping price and everything, you'd snap it up in a heartbeat, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now I have some PayPal available, so it's not like, you couldn't budget for it or anything like that. So it's definitely something where, again, yeah, you do look back on that original price, and even with the shipping costs all included, although it is kind of high, you're like, you know what? Um, Maybe I can just bite the bullet on this one and maybe sell a card to kind of recoup some costs, just to have it for the collection. Because, and we've said this a lot on the podcast, but sometimes it's about, maybe paying through the nose a little bit, knowing that you might not see that card again. And I know, this rings true for myself with a couple different cards, but that was one, like I said, in recent memory where I didn't buy it. I thought I would see another, and I just haven't. And I know that's been the case with a lot of other collectors out there. And I've been told this all the time where, and even going back to the White Whale episode where we talked about those cards that we, for whatever reason, can't seem to track down for our collections for one reason or another. But sometimes those cards, they just slip through your fingers, and you never really know when you're going to see another one.
Yeah, no question. And there's a couple for me that are like that. Kind of starting on more of an obscure one, for my Jalmerson collection is the 1617 Upper Deck Midnight Parallel that I believe those were given out at the Expo in 2017.
I went to the expo. Man, you should have let me know. I would have tried to find you one. Yeah, those Midnight Parallels from 2017 were nice.
Yeah, very nice cards. And there was one that popped up on eBay shortly after, and I don't know what it was listed for, maybe $7-8 or something. And I just said, that's probably more than what it's worth, and it's not crazy rare. It's not like it was the high gloss parallel or anything. There's 25 of them. It's fairly easy to find, right? Well, no.
Especially for a modern card. Like out
Right.
of 25 is quite a significant print run.
Yeah. So I just figured, oh, one will pop up at auction for 99 cents and I'll get it for $1 or $2, no big deal. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And I always kind of had that copy on the back burner and, had it in my watch list and stuff. And one day went back and just said, I'm tired of not having this thing. I'm just going to suck it up and buy it. So I go back on my eBay watch list and try to find it, and it's gone. Someone else bought it, and I since then have never seen a copy since. And, even though it's within the last few years, sometimes finding those show exclusive cards can just be such a pain. So that's definitely one that, if one popped up again for $10 with shipping or, whatever it was, around that, I would have no issue just immediately buying it. So definitely that's a frustrating one, just kind of given that it should have been easier to find than it is, but and just that it's really a pretty cheap card and nothing of much significance, but for whatever reason just is one that has not popped up since, and it's kind of bugging me over the last few years. And then another one that's I've mentioned on the podcast in the past, but is a much more substantial card for my Jalmerson collection, is the 1314 Dominion Engravatures card numbered out 15. And like I mentioned earlier, there's been a couple that have surfaced earlier on, closer to release, that I just thought, given it's Jalmerson, it's not Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves or Duncan Keith or someone like that. It's Jalmerson. In the grand scheme of the hobby, he's kind of a common player. And, his card at around release was selling for around $100. And, I just said, that's way too much for him. He should probably be more like 30, 40, maybe $50. So I'm not paying 100. That's crazy. Well, fast forward to 2020, I still don't have one, haven't seen one in years. And if one popped up for $100, I'm pretty confident I would probably find a way to scoop it up pretty quickly. So, those are two that really stand out to me in terms of passing on a card at the time that I thought I'd be able to find for cheaper, not even necessarily all that much longer after the fact, but it's been years now for both of those and still have yet to see one in that time since. So definitely two that I wish I had that, I'm still looking for. Changing gears to kind of one that's a little bit more generic in terms of, what it can mean for any given collection, but just not having a very clear direction for your collection. And for me, when I think of that, that kind of comes to a quantity over quality type of mindset for my collection when I was growing up. Not even just as a super little kid, because it's very understandable as a little kid for, a kid to just want as many cards as possible, and that's understandable. But I think even kind of as a teenager and, going through high school and stuff, sometimes I, had the mentality of just getting a lot more cards for the money as opposed to getting, nicer cards for that same amount of money. And, there are definitely things that I would have, gone back and wish I'd done differently, as well as also kind of earlier on in my collecting, just switching player collections pretty frequently. I've talked about it before. I collected Brian Little for a year and then switched and collected Zach Bogosian for a year and on and on and on, and kind of just had these player collections that I would have for a year or two. And just, I really enjoyed them at the time, but I didn't really have a great reason for actually having them. For those two guys, they were Atlanta Thrashers players. And at the time, the Chicago Wolves were the AHL team for the Thrashers. And so, by association, I liked the Thrashers. So that's kind of why I collected those guys. But it was really just kind of, these are, new rookies on that team. And might as well go after their stuff. But didn't really have that deep passion for really going after their stuff, for the long term. So kind of in a way set me back a little bit, in terms of being able to collect some other stuff, but those kind of all go under that umbrella of not necessarily having a super clear direction for the collection. Aaron, is there any examples of that you've had in your past?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there at some point in time with our collections, whether that's, something we're going through right now or it's something we've been through in the past. I definitely have quite a few stories on that. Same deal. Like when I started collecting, I'm like really getting serious about my collection and wanting to kind of focus on something. I, of course, focus on the goalies. But, I kind of went a little crazy with it. I don't have too many of these cards anymore, but I would see, a goalie have a great night, and I'm like, oh man, I definitely want to pick up, a sweet autograph card of them, or, a nice patch card. And, the list goes on. I'd see them, make a great save, and they would make, the TSN, top 10 or something just really, really cool. Or I would like their gear. Like I would go as far as just liking the equipment that they would wear and thinking they looked really cool, or their mask, and thinking, oh man, like I would really love a card of that goalie in that mask or in that pair of pads or whatever it was. So I remember picking up just random goalie cards, just as much as I could. Again, I was in high school then, so I couldn't pick up as much cards as I wanted to, but the ones that I did, I had a pretty well-rounded collection in that sense, where as far as the goalies go, I was picking up, a new goalie quite frequently. And I never went as far as starting a full-on player collection of these different types of players. But at the end of the day, I did unfortunately, have a bunch of goalie cards that at the end of the day, I didn't really need. And so when I really got back into collecting, around 2012, 13, I just decided to sell off a lot of the stuff that I really didn't need. And to be honest, I can't really remember a lot of the stuff I had because, again, it was stuff that at the time it meant a lot. But in the grand scheme of my collection and where I wanted to go with it, I felt like these cards can be turned into something much better. And so I eventually sold off a lot of these nice cards that were, nice cards. And I made sure to find really good homes for these cards, but at the end of the day, did not really belong, so to speak, in my collection. And so I eventually sold out with my goalie collection at the time, and had a nice little nest egg to start my Jonas Enroth collection when I really decided from that point forward to go on and become like a super collector of his cards. And so I've definitely been there when you start looking through your collection and you're like, man, like I have a lot of cards and I could go through each and one of these cards and definitely find some meaning behind it, some significance. But at the end of the day, I really felt that it was best to move all of them and really, again, turn those cards into something that I really would appreciate. And I think that I did that. My collection is a lot more smaller than it was in the past, but I feel like that the cards I do have do mean a lot to me, whereas before it was just a whole bunch of nothing really. So, I definitely pick up a card here and there of goalies I do enjoy, but nothing like it was before. So I definitely have been there when I don't have a clear direction of where I want my collection to go. And so unfortunately that can make you regret a large portion of your collection. So I was thankful enough that I was able to kind of sell out. But unfortunately, there have been a lot of collectors, and depending on what they collect, if they collect a bunch of, sets from various years that they accumulate, they could end up with a garage full of cards that are, especially in hockey, very, very hard to move. So, yeah, definitely, I was very fortunate with the stuff I was able to pick up and eventually sell. But I've definitely seen it where collectors have, garage full and just rooms full of cards. And I've seen pictures of guys who have a massive collection of just everything you can imagine. But unfortunately, it's just very hard to move. And they know that, their collection, as far as like where the heart of their collection is, this isn't it. So it's definitely hard to get past. So yeah, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Acquiring a bunch of cards that you really don't need. And Eric, you alluded to earlier that your collection could have been spent somewhere else. So I think with a lot of collectors, they definitely got to look at their collection and find what they are going to keep and find stuff that they could really move and use towards something else. So I definitely have found myself there as well. And hopefully this podcast can help other collectors kind of move on from the stuff that they don't really need and find that true direction for their collections. One of the final points here we want to make, and I think we've all been there, I can't think of a card that comes to mind when I think about this, but there definitely has been that quite a few times. Or actually, no, something happened last week, actually, forgetting to place a bid. I think we've all been there a couple times, and this actually happened to me last week, actually. I have no idea what I was doing. I was asleep at the wheel, not literally, but I forgot to place a bid on, I believe it was the 1999 Victory Parallels out of 100. I forget what the parallels are called. Eric, I'm sure you can help me out. But you know those Victory Parallels, they're quite nice. They're out of 100. And I was going to bid on a Curtis Joseph version. I was just talking about my goalie collection, but this is a parallel that I love. And of course, having any Cujo card as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan is awesome. So I definitely had my eye on that. I forget what it sold for, but yeah, I just forgot to place a bid. And yeah, that card sold for whatever it sold for. And kind of regretting that one because it's not an expensive card by any means, but it's definitely a nice looking parallel. And especially, it's 20 years old now, so it doesn't come up too often, but one that I definitely would love for the collection. So hopefully if another pops up, I'll be able to remember to bid on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're referencing those Victory Collection parallels. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And those are absolutely stunning cards that I think were pretty well ahead of their time, honestly. I mean, I think if a parallel like that came out nowadays, even though people would say, oh, yeah, that's a really nice looking card, I don't think it would necessarily, really stand out just because we see somewhat similar types of things nowadays. But for the time, I mean, those cards were just so, eye appealing and just really caught your attention right away. And I have owned one of those. I actually ended up passing it along to Billy for her collection because she's working on the set of those cards. I saw one of the Pavel Bure cards on Facebook and just picked it up knowing that she needed it and sent it along her way. But yeah, that's definitely frustrating for sure. I know that those are extremely nice cards. So definitely a bummer that you missed out on that one. Um, like you kind of said, I know that there's definitely multiple examples of myself doing that same thing as well, just forgetting to put a bid on something. And I can't really think of too many that come to mind, even though I know that there are at least a handful of them. But the only one that I can really think of is earlier this summer, there was a Nathan Horton 2003-04 Upper Deck Ice rookie out of 99 on eBay. And I think the starting bid was like $7 or something. And it ended up going unsold because I just forgot to put a bid on it and totally meant to. And I was actually going to when it was first put up for auction, but for whatever reason I didn't. And then I just completely forgot about it and it went unsold. I contacted the seller and said, hey, I'm more than willing to buy it at that price. Do you still have it? Or are you willing to sell it? And it was kind of weird. He said something like, oh, yeah, I still have it, but I'm not going to be, on eBay much like over the next couple months or something. So maybe in the fall or something like something very strange like that that made no sense, what the explanation was. And it's a pretty, fairly active seller. I've seen cards from him before and I don't know if I've bought anything from him before, but I've seen him around, pretty regularly. So just, it was kind of a strange situation, but definitely wish that I had not missed out on that because, for whatever $7 or $8 to have an ice rookie out in 99 for my project would have been really nice. Obviously that's not Fleury or Bergeron or anything, but still just finding some of those scarcer rookie cards, this long after the fact can be a pain. So missing out on that for $7 or $8 was definitely frustrating. And then on the flip side, going from forgetting to buy something to buying something that you really didn't want to, I think we've all kind of had that of just, picking something up for whatever reason, whether that be, one card here or there, or kind of just having almost like a mini buying spree at times. And again, this is a kind of thing where I know that I've had instances like this, and I just can't think of too many great examples. The only one that came to mind is probably, I don't know, maybe earlier this year on Hobby Insider, someone was selling a really nice Jacques Plante complete package card from In the Game Ultimate. It's a very nice card. I mean, it really is. It's hard to not like it when you're holding it in your hands, and I still have it. But at the same time, I don't really know why I so aggressively went after it and just had to have it at the time. I have other Jacques Pont memorabilia cards. So I really don't know why I wanted it so badly at the time, but and it was a fair price. It's not like I wildly overpaid for it or anything, but for whatever reason, I just really wanted to have it. And, ever since it's kind of been like, why did I do that? Like, I really don't need that. I don't even know why I really wanted it at the time. So that's one example for me. But like I said, I'm sure there are countless other ones where, I could, go back and say, yeah, I really don't know why I did that. But that's just the one that sticks out to me as being a fairly recent example. Aaron, what's one or two that come to mind for you as just being an impulse buy?
For me, well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a non-PC card. I mean, it could be even cards that we do need for our personal collections, but or our player collections, but we buy them at a certain point that isn't too great for our wallets, like where yes, I need these 5 cards that have just been released, but sometimes we're a little bit too happy on the trigger and we pay, that premium price point on a newly released card. And then you look at your credit card bill and you're like, oh man, maybe I should have waited a little bit before pulling the trigger on these cards and I would have saved, a couple more dollars. So definitely, an impulse buy on, a newly released product and for the couple cards that we do need from that product. And then coming back at the end of the day thinking, okay, that was a little bit too much. I definitely got to slow down next release. I definitely have been there. As far as any other examples of that, pretty much every time I've attended the Toronto Expo, for those who've been, I've been fortunate enough to go about 3 times. And I always have a blast going there. And I definitely spend a lot more than I choose to every single time I go, whether it be boxes or just picking up single cards for my collection or just cards that I think are really cool. So I think card shows might get a pass for impulse buying because I guess, if you go to a card show, that's what you want to do. You want to spend some money on some cards. So definitely for me, I definitely have a couple cards in my collection. That just don't fit. But, I picked them up at the expo. So, I mean, for me, they're kind of like souvenirs. Like, yeah, like I remember picking that card up from that booth or negotiating for a nice price. And yeah, so definitely cards that I'm going to keep, but definitely something that are definitely big impulse buys, especially, again, for those who've been to the Toronto Expo, seeing all those booths with all those cards, you just can't help but look through boxes and look through those display cases and find some cards that maybe you don't need, but you need. So I've definitely been there quite a few times. And it's kind of like buy now and cry later. That's kind of like my, method when going to the Toronto Expo. So yeah, pretty much everything I've ever bought from the expo has been an impulse buy. So yeah, we'll see what happens once the in-person expos start up again. But yeah, maybe I'll try and activate some self-control, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I agree with you that I think card shows should kind of just get a pass in that way, just because, like you said, the point of you going for the most part is that you want to pick stuff up and just have a good time with it. And, there have definitely been cards that I've bought at card shows that, were kind of just, oh, here this card is. Yeah, it's cool. It's a decent price. Sure. Why not? And, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if you're going just absolutely nuts on stuff, then maybe that's different. But, I think there's a big difference, like you mentioned, between doing that at a card show versus just doing it at, on any given day on eBay or something. So I think that's kind of where the line is for that. And I think we've both been on both sides of that in both of those situations. So yeah, that's definitely a good point there. And then transitioning to the next one, and this is kind of the last like main topic, so to speak, but being greedy when you're trying to trade or sell something and then ending up getting way less value later on, or even potentially just being stuck with the card and not being able to move it at all. And I think that, again, this is probably one that most people have experienced, whether that be that, like Aaron mentioned at the top, that you just overvalue it yourself, or maybe a guy had a hot stretch and his stuff really increased in value, and you were hoping to get a top dollar price for it and just weren't able to, and then you kind of missed out. And for me, one that is still pretty fresh in memory is I have a Thatcher Demko Ultimate Collection autograph rookie out of 299. And obviously, when he had his hot stretch in the postseason, his stuff exploded overnight. And I had listed it up on eBay and on Facebook and stuff, and was really hoping to cash out as high as possible on that. And I did get an offer of $50 US on eBay, and unfortunately, I decided to try to get a little bit more, and the guy never responded to my counter offer. And since then, the card has dropped off in value to the point where I don't know what it's worth nowadays. Probably 20 or $30 US, somewhere in there is probably fair for it, I would say, at this point. But definitely not 50. So looking back, I definitely wish that I had just said, hey, that's fair, I'll take it, no big deal, because I don't have any attachment to the card or anything. I just picked it up as part of a trade, and really don't have any use for it. So looking back, I think that's one that I would definitely change the outcome of that if I could do it over again. Aaron, what are some examples of that in your experience in the hobby?
Yeah, a similar story. I pulled a Jacob Vrana rookie autograph card from OPG Platinum. I forget which one was his rookie year, but anyway, it was a rookie auto out of 50, and it was the Seismic Gold auto, and those parallels look amazing. And so I loved the card, but I definitely knew that, definitely as a player, this card is not going to fit in my collection. So I definitely wanted to move and sell it. And I remember looking at the completed listings and seeing one sell for like 125 or something, and just something crazy like that. And I'm like, oh man, I must have struck gold. Like, this is a pretty good card. It's definitely going to pay for the box and then some, in addition to all my other hits. And so I definitely got a little bit greedy on that one. And I tried to get a lot more value than I should have, all because I saw that one sell for like 125. And turns out I did find out later who bought that card. It was a super collector of his. So and this just goes to show you, just because something sells on eBay for a certain price doesn't really mean it's worth that much, because coming to know from that collector, he was pretty much the guy when it comes to Vrana cards at the time. So he paid through the nose on his copy out of 50, but that was kind of it. Like, the market for Vrana wasn't much, and still isn't much at all, to my knowledge. So he had kind of set the market for that card out of 50, and that was kind of it. No one else was going to pay that premium for that card. He just wanted it and paid for it. Good for him. But then when I saw that, I was very misled into what kind of value he would command on the secondary market. And so I held out for not 125, but, sort of closer to that, like maybe 100 or maybe 90 or something like that. But I eventually held out too long, and I definitely did not get the value that I originally had hoped for. Same scenario, I was offered, I forget, probably around the same, like maybe $50 or maybe something like in range of like $70 or something at the time. And that would have been, quite good value. But again, I was definitely getting a little bit greedy with it. I eventually sold it for quite a little bit less than that. Still a decent value, in addition to the other cards that I sold from that box break. But again, nowhere near the highest price that this card is going to sell. So definitely, if you get an offer on a card, especially if it's right after the release date, chances are for a lot of players, that is the highest you're ever going to get for like 95% of the players. Of course, there is those playoff heroes like Demko that come out of nowhere and their cards have an artificial jump in value. Traditionally, you're going to get the max value, a week or two, maybe a month after the release, I'd say. So yeah, that was something where similar story. I definitely should have taken that first offer I received on the card, but instead I didn't, and eventually it came back to bite me, and I sold it for a lot less than I could have.
Yeah, that's definitely frustrating, and I totally understand that. And then kind of just the last real topic that we mentioned at the top is just kind of that general bad luck. Aaron, I'm not sure if there's anything super specific that you have. I know, we kind of mentioned before starting to record that, we've, I'm sure, dropped cards here and there and dinged up a corner or something, but I don't think either of us really have anything, super catastrophic that's happened. Yeah, really the only one for me that I even put down on my list was I have a bunch of Jacob Slavin Upper Deck Ice rookie cards. And for whatever reason, I have no idea if it's just because I kept them all together. And when I say that, like actually all together, not like, oh, they're just in the same place, but they're actually all together. And for whatever reason, all of the foil on the card or on pretty much all of the cards is actually kind of like started to wear off and like kind of smear and stuff. It's really strange. And I just noticed that, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, digging out some stuff and saw all that. And I probably have, I don't know, 10 or 15 of the card. And pretty much every single one of them is like noticeably, not like damaged, because it's not actual, damage. It's not like the corner is destroyed or anything, but all of the foil is just kind of like screwed up on pretty much every single copy. So, I don't know if that's my doing from how I stored them. I'm sure that might have had something to do with it, but it's still kind of strange anyway. So that's really the only thing that I could think of. Aaron, if there's anything that you can think of to add to that, that's fine. Otherwise, I can transition us and we can get into the kind of the final thing of that being our biggest hobby regret ever.
I'm fortunate enough to be in the same boat where I don't really have any, I guess, bad luck when it comes to, my cards that I personally own in my collection. I have heard stories though where, the family dog gets into the collection and some bad stuff happens there, or, you're drinking, a hot beverage or two and, you know, it's too close to the cards and yeah, it's never a good mix. But fortunately, nothing like that has ever happened to me as far as any bad luck with my cards getting destroyed or anything like that. So check back with me in a couple of years and I might have a story or two, but knock on wood, nothing has happened yet.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I'm sure, of course, it's probably just a matter of time, but yeah, we're probably lucky to have gone this far and not really had anything too catastrophic. So, um, like you said, knock on wood, hopefully nothing too crazy happens in the future. But that kind of wraps it up as far as those common types of hobby regrets and just some of our stories. But of course, we want to, finish it off with a bang and share with you guys the single biggest regret that each of us have during our time in the hobby. And, obviously throughout the episode, we've shared some pretty big ones already. I'm sure for Aaron, probably that Ovechkin printing plate is a big one, and, some other things like that. And for myself, the McKinnon Future Watch autograph now being worth, whatever, 10 times what I sold it for back in the day. And, I considered having that one be my biggest, but then I thought about this one, and this one just had to take the cake. And this one, as far as a category that it falls under, would be the being greedy, trying to trade or sell something, and then ending up getting way less value later. And back in 2015, Teuvo Teravainen was a pretty big up-and-coming prospect for the Blackhawks. And I was really excited to have Upper Deck Premier coming back for the first time in over 10 years at that point. And I went pretty hard getting some of his stuff. Got a couple copies of his normal RPA and his Silver Spectrum RPA out of 25. And those were both redemptions, actually. So they weren't live for quite a few months later. But I got those cards in. And like I said, I had 2 of each. So I didn't necessarily need to have both of them. So I was actively, fielding offers on them and just kind of seeing what the market was like. And it was definitely later, like I said, it was probably into 2016 that this happened. I guess it would have had to have been, but it was back on the Klutz and Char forums. and someone was interested in, I believe it was just one of the Silver Spectrum patch autos out of 25. And the patch on it was pretty decent. It wasn't anything just absolutely bonkers. It definitely could have been better, but it was still a very nice patch from the Blackhawks crest. And I think I might have already sold the other one, so it might have been the only one I had at that point, if I remember correctly. I think that's what happened. So I was kind of, hoping to really, if I was going to move it, get good value for it. And we were talking trade, and just kind of talking about some cards that he had, and seeing what I might be interested in, and trying to figure out values, for the Teravainen and also for the cards that he had. And this had been, I think, fairly shortly after 2015-16 OPG Platinum was released. And like I said, we're talking trade, talking about what cards he has. And we kind of have a trade on the table. He wanted to take some time to think about it, as well as he had actually, the cards that we were talking about and theoretically making the trade for, he had actually taken to his LCS to have the shop owner potentially sell those cards. So he needed to go into the shop and see if the guy still had them. So it was kind of like a pending deal. And unfortunately, when he went to go back, the cards were gone. So the deal never worked out. But I think had I maybe not been quite as greedy with the deal, it probably would have been the kind of thing that he just said, yeah, that's fine. I'll just, call him right now and tell him not to sell them. Because I think at that point, he was pretty sure that they were still there, because I think it had been earlier that day that he had taken them to the shop. But what the cards were, that I know you guys are like, okay, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? Well, I don't remember the exact version of one of the cards. I think it was just a rainbow, so not numbered or anything. But so I think that was one. It might have just been the base. It might have been like a rainbow tracks or whatever. One of the more common versions. And then the other one was a red prism. And again, I know I'm not being super specific yet, but just to give you an idea, it's not like the Golden Treasure 1 of 1 or an Emerald Surge out of 10 or anything crazy like that. But, these were both autograph cards. And, here in the year 15-16, I think you kind of can guess where this is going. So the trade that was being discussed was the Teravainen Premier Silver Spectrum patch auto out of 25 for, like I said, whatever it was, a base, a rainbow tracks, whatever it was, autograph of Connor McDavid, and then a red prism autograph of Connor McDavid. And, at the time of release, it was kind of hard to get a good feel for what those McDavid cards were worth. And, unfortunately, that deal never happened. And like I said, if I had just said, hey, just give me one of them, that's fine. I'm sure we could have gotten the deal done. And, now looking back, that Teravainen card is probably worth like $50. And those McDavid cards are substantially worth, a lot more than that. The more common one, whatever it was, rainbow tracks, base, whatever, is probably, $400, $500, $600 US card. And the red prism is probably more like, I don't know, $750, $800, $900 maybe. So, looking back on that and realizing that had it worked out, I could have potentially had, in today's dollars, maybe $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 US in a couple of McDavid autograph cards versus, a Teravainen card that's now worth $50. That one definitely hurts that I wasn't able to swing that deal. So I would say, the McKinnon Future Watch autograph, selling that way too soon, but also really that not being able to land those McDavid autographs for that Teravainen card are definitely two of, and probably my two biggest hobby regrets.
Wow, that's like, wow, just hearing that, because I've never heard that story from you. Like we've been talking for quite a while now, obviously with the podcast, but also off air too. And that story is just, that's a big one. Like that's a big one. I definitely, like, I feel you on that one. That's that's a tough story to listen to, but live and learn, I guess. And that's those are amazing cards that unfortunately are not in your collection. But again, live and learn on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes I kind of just forget to, not even just to mention it, but I kind of just want to forget about it and move on because
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I
very
don't blame you.
unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
It
But
is, it is.
yeah, even though that's pretty bad, um, I don't even know if that necessarily compares to your biggest hobby regret, Aaron. So
Uh,
lay it on us. Let's hear it.
yeah, so this one happened about, I would say about 20 years ago, maybe 18 or 19 years ago, but yeah, around there. So quite a long time ago. I was a kid, and man, I still remember this moment. It was a pretty bad one. Um, so back then, I remember my aunt um, hearing that I collected hockey cards, and of course, wasn't serious about it at the time, unlike now, a super serious collector. But yeah, so she had heard through my parents that I had collected cards, and I did have a little collection at the time. Nothing of significance, just 90s junk, but they were my cards, and I love them very much. And so she agreed to bring over some cards that I think my uncle knew the guy, or he was looking to get like rid of these cards, my uncle's friend or something. For whatever reason, a big bunch of cards had come to their attention, and they knew, hey, like our nephew collects cards, so maybe he'd want to take a look at them. So I said, okay, yeah, great, like a bunch of cards, like that would be awesome. And so one day I went over to my family's house, and I was presented two binders of cards, not to keep, but just to kind of look through them and see these cool cards. And I was told that I could not keep all the cards because this had to be returned to like my uncle's friend or something, and he was going to give them away to someone else, or sell them or something. He didn't really know what he had, but just kind of was going through some stuff, and wanted to get rid of a bunch of his cards. They were taking up room, and so I was promised, hey, they're going to get rid of them anyway. Just take a few of them, and that's that. So as a kid, like, this is awesome. You give me two binders of cards, and I get to choose a handful of ones that I wanted. Like, that was a dream come true for 7-year-old Aaron. So I grabbed these binders and I was looking through them all day, and I can't list off um, every set that was in there. I'm not sure if they were all complete sets, but these cards were, man, 60s and 70s cards. And for those wondering, the Gretzky was not in there. I do not think um, the Gretzky was in there from 79. But what was in there was mainly junk, some older OPG stuff that wouldn't be worth much today. But card that I did pass on was a 66 Topps Bobby Orr rookie card. And for those who are just losing their minds right now, keep in mind, I was a kid and I didn't really know much about hockey cards or their value. So I did not know that I was looking at a Bobby Orr rookie card. And, it wasn't until, well, first off, like, these cards were in incredible condition. They were all in binders, all sleeved, all in beautiful order and everything like that. I'm not sure whose cards these were, but whoever it was may not have known too much about cards, but they protected their stuff like nobody's business. They were organized and clean, and some great copies of these cards. So obviously it was a raw copy of a Bobby Orr rookie card from the 66 top set. I do not know if it was a complete set, but there was a lot of cards from that era, and the Bobby Orr was one of them. There might have been actually more than one Bobby Orr rookie card in this collection of cards, but I decided as a kid to not grab it because, one, I didn't know anything about value, or even if I did, I wouldn't really care because I was a kid. And so I decided to not grab it. And because, if anyone knows the Bobby Orr rookie card, it's not, a vertical card. It's a horizontal card. And of course, as a kid, that does not have, the eye appeal like a vertical one does. For those listening who might be new to collecting cards, that might be kind of weird. But I mean, for those who have been in the hobby for quite a long time, traditionally, those vertical cards are much more appealing to the eye than horizontal ones. I have come to appreciate different cards in my collection including some horizontal versions of cards. So now it doesn't really bug me as much, but I know as a kid it definitely did. And so that's one of the reasons why I knew who Bobby Orr was. I knew that was an old card, and that was really cool. But for some reason in me, I couldn't get past the horizontal look of the card. And so as a kid, it did not appeal to me at all. So that was not one of the cards that I wanted to choose, because again, I got all these cards for free and I got to choose 5 or 6 of them. The Bobby Orr rookie cards is of course one that I did not want to choose. So I forget what I actually ended up with. I did end up with 1 or 2 Bobby Orr cards, but it was from like the 70s and it wasn't as cool. But as a kid, they looked a lot better than his rookie card, which I did not know that it was his rookie card at the time. And I think a Jacques Plante card, an old Plante card, and an old Gordie Howe card, not his rookie, but definitely an old one from the 60s. So those ones, I still have those cards, and I definitely look at them with some fond memories, but definitely one that definitely burns when I think about it too much, because I passed on one and possibly more than one Bobby Orr rookie card, and I didn't know it at the time, but it wasn't until years later until I got more familiar with cards, and I decided to look up the Bobby Orr rookie card. And as soon as I did, my jaw like hit the floor, because not only have I seen this card before, but I've actually held the card, in my hands. Like, I know this card. I've seen this card before. I had one temporarily in my possession, and I chose to not take it for free. It was wild. So I don't regret it, like, seriously lose sleep over it, because again, I was a kid. It was similar to those old stories about kids who used to use Gretzky rookie cards, to make the funny sound on their bikes, in their bicycle spokes. So I know a bunch of rookie cards of Gretzky's were destroyed years ago because people just didn't know what they had. And not so quite a Gretzky rookie card, but definitely with the Bobby Orr, quite significant. And as a kid, I just did not know what I was looking at, and it just was not appealing to me at all. And again, it wasn't until years later that I really realized what I had in my hands. And just for old time's sake, I looked up the Bobby Orr rookie cards before coming on here, and a PSA 1 or just any kind of graded card, or even just a raw version, graded authentic, is about close to about $2,000. And these cards were, again, pretty clean copies of the Bobby Orr rookie. So definitely would have been over a 1, probably around a 3 or a 4. Honestly, maybe even more than that. So I think an SGC 7.5 sold for about 20 grand. So I'm going to stop talking about prices, because, then it will make me regret it a little bit more, knowing that I had 1 or possibly 2 copies of a Bobby Orr rookie card that I would have no doubt, if I did pick it up at the time, eventually got graded and sold eventually. So that is one that is easily my biggest regret in the hobby. Again, it's more of like a playful regret right now, because again, I don't lose sleep over it. It's not a really big regret in my life or anything like that. I just find it funny how I passed on a Bobby Orr rookie, or probably multiple copies of a Bobby Orr rookie, without even realizing it. So, it always makes me laugh when I see people show off a Bobby Orr rookie card, because they probably paid a significant chunk of change for one, and I just missed out on 1 or 2 copies for free. So it's always funny when I see one, because it brings me back to that moment, looking through that binder and seeing the Bobby Orr rookie card from 1966 Topps.
You done messed up, Aaron.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the title for today's podcast. Just kind of talking about our biggest regrets in this hobby.
Yeah, that's definitely tough.
Like, what do you say with that? Like you can't really respond to that, Eric. That's you don't really have to have an answer for that. That's just tough all around, passing up on a Bobby Orr rookie. All right, so just as always, just the interactive questions. I don't expect you guys to top that, but if you have any of your biggest hobby regrets, definitely share them with us. We're going to be posting that question on all the social media accounts, so definitely look out for that as always. We definitely want to hear your stories about Like, we really want to hear your stories about your hobby regrets, because although it might hurt to think about, that's the fun part of this hobby. Sometimes you're on, top of the world, and sometimes, you're the bug on the windshield. So I was definitely a giant bug on the giant hobby windshield when it comes to that Bobby Orr rookie card. So definitely let us know your stories, and we'll be sure to share a couple and cry with you.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear your stories, like Aaron said. But good luck topping that Bobby Orr story. And if you can, I immediately already feel terrible for you, but we want to hear it anyway. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed and gotten entertainment out of hearing some of our regrets and stuff. And even though it's not necessarily fun, I mean it is, but it's also kind of frustrating at times to look back on things like that. Like Aaron said, it can be nice to kind of just get a laugh out of something like that years later, and kind of just be able to move on, but still, remember that and cry a little bit here and there. So, yeah, please do be sure to share those stories with us, though. We really like hearing stuff like that, and we like hearing from you guys anyway, but hearing things like this is just completely different, and on a whole other level, especially if you do happen to have a story like Aaron's Bobby Orr rookie card story. That's quite the story. So we would love to hear it, and we'd love to be able to share that with other people as well. So as always, please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Center Ice Cardcast, and on Twitter at Center Ice CC. Please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.